I was the woman at the back table pretending a floral centerpiece was fascinating, so I didn't have to pretend I was fine. Vineyard string lights swinging in a hill country breeze, strangers slow dancing, like they'd all gotten the happiness memo, and my thumb kept finding the brass coin on my necklace with anchor stamped into it. My daughter Sage's word for me before a routine procedure wasn't routine, and life split into before and after. That's when a man in a midnight suit crouched beside my chair, like he'd run out of air, and whispered, "Pretend you're with me." No, please, but his eyes said it. The kind of eyes that have seen too much and still won't look away. And before I could say yes or no, he nodded toward the entrance, where a little boy stood in a tiny vest, scanning the room like a satellite trying to lock on. Then, that kid launched across the floor and crashed into me like he'd been running toward me his whole life, Mom. He breathed into my dress, and the band, and the chatter, and the whole room just thinned out, until it was only this child and my heartbeat, and a word I hadn't heard in years, and yeah, that happened. We left early, the parking lot buzzing with off-key drunk karaoke from the shuttle bus. The man introduced himself as Adrian. The boy was Theo, and the drive back to Austin was headlights and quiet, while Theo hummed 3 gentle notes in the back seat, like he could keep the world together with a string. Adrian finally said he runs Meridian Ridge Capital, and people think numbers can fix everything. But his wife Nora got sick, and the math never penciled out. The penthouse was all glass and clean lines, but the details gave them away. A lineup of dinosaur figurines arranged like soldiers, a piano without fingerprints, a drawing on the fridge that said "Dad" in letters too big for the paper. And Theo took my hand and showed me his room like he'd been waiting for me to see it, bed made too tight, stuffed fox with one button eye. "She used to read there," he said, pointing to the rug, "until the endings got tired. Then he checked my face and asked if I read tired endings too. I sat on that rug and read until he fell asleep with his fingers pinched in the hem of my dress, like an anchor line. And in the hallway, Adrian said he'd asked me to be a prop, and I'd walked in like a landing place, and he hated needing help. But here we were, so he told me the truth about a board that didn't trust a grieving CEO and a partner named Damon, whispering about stability and a museum gala next week, where he needed to look like a man who hadn't quit life. And I told him I hated lying, and he said he hated asking, and we settled on this. 1 week, not for optics, for Theo. Showing up at 6 o'clock for 7 days rewired me. Theo waited by the elevator like a bellhop, whose tip was hugs. We cooked pasta, too salty, because we let him measure. We built Lego castles like hopeful blueprints. We wrote a bedtime song that looped the same 3 notes from the car, and Adrian hovered in doorways, trying to relearn how to step into his own life. Sometimes he'd flip a pancake too high and pretend he meant to. Sometimes he'd try the song and miss every note, and I watched grief loosen its grip on his throat, a little like maybe presence can outstare pain if you keep showing up, you know what I mean. Gala night was a jewelry box. The Blanton glowing blue walls, glass everywhere, heads turning while whispers stacked up like toothpicks. Adrian's sister Meredith found me under a Calder mobile and held my hands like she'd been waiting 30 years to do it. Former teacher turned literacy fighter with a streak of silver in her hair. "I taught teenagers," she said. "Grief always tries to bluff the test. My brother needs a reason to come back to earth, and my nephew just chose you. Don't waste his jump." And before I could answer, Theo in a little tux spotted me unclenched and shouted, "Mom!" Across donors and glass and art camera flashes popped, and I swear I saw something inside Adrian's armor let light through later on the roof under a Texas sky too big for its zip code. He said this was supposed to be a performance, and it didn't feel like one. I said he asked me to pretend, but Theo didn't, and then Adrian's phone buzzed, and all the warmth drained out of his face. Damon wanted a meeting about a reporter circling him for months, and my stomach just fell because months before Adrian ever whispered at that wedding I had started digging into Meridian Ridge. Rent overdue, righteous anger with nowhere to park a lead about offshore weirdness, me trying to be a watchdog. Then I met a kid who needed a harbor, and I forgot my angle. I could have lied. I didn't, I told Adrian. The file existed. I told him it was before any of this, and he stepped back like my words were wired and live. So that's the play, he said. Cool enough to frost glass. Get close, gain. Access, use my kid as a key break, words, not fight words. Get out, he said, don't come back, and I made it to the sidewalk before the unknown call. Damon's voice smooth like a showroom, offering me a package to finish. What I started a midnight courier envelope with transfers and emails and minutes, all pointing at Adrian, like a neon arrow, the kind of package that gives you a headline and steals your soul. I poured cheap cab, spread the papers out, and something felt off in the margins. Dates bumping into each other, digital stamps with a stutter, phrases no human uses twice the same way. So I pulled Sage's shoebox from under the bed. Drawings, bad jokes, the hardware store washer necklace. A note with backward letters that said, "Be brave, mama. Help people so you can help you." And I cried the kind of cry that leaves you washed and ready. Then I took that envelope back to the tower before sunrise. The doorman said, "Mr. Cole left instructions. I said I did too. Tell him the transfers are forged. The emails are stitched. And if he ignores me and this child pays again, I will go to war for a kid who isn't mine, and never was." The elevator doors opened, and Adrian walked out with sleep on his shirt and anger in his eyes. 60 seconds, he said. 30, I said, circling a Cayman routing number with a marker. This shows up on Damon's personal real estate purchase 3 days after a company-expensed trip to the island. It's sloppy because he thinks you're too broken to read the lines. He called it guessing, I called it training. We made a terrible truce. If I'm wrong, I disappear. If I'm right, you let me help burn this down. And trust is expensive when you've lost too much, but he paid anyway. We turned his study into a war room. Laptops, bankers' boxes, legal pads filling with arrows and dates, and Theo's earnest doodles because he insisted on drawing at the corner of the desk as long as he could be near at 2 a.m. We forgot to eat barbecue at 3. He rolled up his sleeves like a man remembering honest work at 4. Theo patted in with bedhead and a fox and asked if we were fighting bad guys, which we were with spreadsheets and stubbornness around 6. The pattern clicked. A shell company Damon had formed 3 months earlier to buy Meridian cheap after he staged Adrian's fall address, tied to Nora's treatment building. Damon on the hospital fundraising board, predation dressed as philanthropy, and then a voicemail. I'd ignored, lit the fuse, Damon bragging about narrative management and paper trails that tell the story. You need, Texas is one-party consent. My recorder worked just fine. The boardroom was mahogany and money, and people who like concise answers. Damon presided like a homecoming king. We're concerned, he said, and I plugged in my HDMI and walked the room through the wires that put Adrian in 2 places at once. The signature artifacts you only get when cut and paste is lazy. The Cayman routing numbers sharing a bed with Damon's purchases. He smirked about entrapment and paranoia. And I said it felt like Tuesday. Then I played his voicemail over the ceiling speakers, and the air shifted, not a movie, no applause. Just a man realizing the room could finally hear him, as he was 2 federal agents came in like a stage direction and walked him out. And the win wasn't the cuffs, it was Adrian turning to the table and saying with no performative shine, "She didn't publish, she could have, she chose us." Choose is a small word until it isn't. After we kept it quiet, a press statement that said what happened without the spicy garnish. Meredith brought Theo with a hand-lettered sign that said, Good guys win, which is arguable. But it felt true for an afternoon and in private. Adrian didn't drop to one knee, he asked for something harder. Don't fix us with a quick answer, he said. Stay on purpose. So I said yes to that, and took a job building an ethics arm inside the company to stop the next Damon before he finds a suit, people said. I wasted a byline, maybe. I finally published where it counts. Inside a life Theo changed in little clicks. You only notice if you're there for the Tuesdays. Jokes that made no sense, then made us laugh anyway. Nights he slept straight through, less checking if I was about to disappear. Still Mom, not a test now, but a fact. On the terrace, we planted forget-me-nots for Sage, and lilies for Nora, and one ridiculous sunflower for forgiveness, because Theo said even villains need something that points toward the light. And 6 months later, I sat across from Damon in a federal prison, where fluorescent lights hum like bad thoughts. He said he was sorry and cried the kind of angry tears that come when your story finally tells the truth about you. I walked out lighter, which is wild to say about a prison corridor. Here's the part that gets people heated. We didn't get married. Not yet. One night on the balcony, Adrian took out a velvet box and held it like a question, and we put it away like an answer. We made eggs at midnight. Instead, we picked presents over performance breakfast, over headlines. And maybe that's the real scandal, two people who didn't cash out a perfect ending while the cameras were still rolling. So tell me what you think. Was I wrong to say yes at that wedding? When a kid needed a landing place, did I betray journalism by refusing the headline? Or honor it by protecting people over clicks? Does a woman who walked in as a prop get to walk out as a mother figure without owing anybody an explanation? And do you believe in sunflowers for people who burned the field? Drop your take, argue with me, tell me what you've seen in boardrooms, or hospital corridors, or under string lights that changed your mind about justice. Tap. Like, hit subscribe, share it with somebody who still thinks power outranks presence. And in the comments, tell me what the right thing looks like when the lines won't stay straight.